most of us know, what feeds the air into it. And normally when you see people put water on the fire, you're trying to put it out. But it works the very opposite in this case. Because first of all, as you know, water is 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. But 2,500 degrees is your magic number. When that water passes through that temperature or beyond, it breaks the water down, divides it, burns the hydrogen from it, and then the oxygen fuels the hydrogen. It's one of the many little things that they hope never takes place deep inside of a nuclear power plant. And what almost happened in Japan with those tsunamis. Now this little leaf that I'm fixing to make, when I started at 10, by the time I got to be 15, I had done and figured out that for the most part, it was always the same old thing that you got to see be made everywhere you went to watch a demonstration, which was somebody making a nail. And so I didn't want to do that. I wanted something more beautiful, more fancy. So I designed this little leaf. And even though I make all kinds of leaves that I put on chandeliers and door hardware and entrance gates, this little leaf is mine. But the first thing we've got to have is 2,800 degrees on the end of the straw. Straw yellow. Always remember, each time metal changes 50 degrees, it changes its shade of color. So that's how you learn what all your temperatures actually are. Just about where we want to be. That's about as pretty a bar though as you ever see burning. First thing, we get all this down to a point. Now the next thing, we've got to decide just how big that leaf is actually going to be. So we pull this down to this, and then this down to that. That'll be the stem on it. But you always want to make it look alike. I've heard it said, well, it's just supposed to imitate. No, it's supposed to look like a leaf. If you have to use 1 drop of your imagination on anything that I ever make, you know what it is, then I need to start all over. Here's where the leaf begins. Then we round down the back edge so it's just smooth. And the next thing is then we pull this down, this. That'll be the stem on that leaf. Blacksmithing is probably without a doubt one of the oldest crafts with which we have. Not as old as gold and silver, brass, bronze, wood, but it's pretty ancient. Next is to form that leaf from that tip. That tip will become our leaf. But now this time, because we're going to be working right here, we need a little bit of strong stability right in here. So we're going to cool down everything and just heat the tip. And if you all wish to see the smallest leaf, if you look at Miss Micah, our greeter at the front, if you look at her earrings, those are the smallest leaf, all hammered out the same way. She's used to people looking at her ears, so it won't bother her. She washes them good every day. Just about there.
You got one? A shear, yeah, but none of this place.
First of all,
have a shear.
remove that scale so the hammer is good.
Shear. I have no idea.
There's the rough part of our leaf. But now for the part that really counts, the real shaping part. A little more hammer right here, and that bit right there. This next time will be where we remove all marks and make it perfectly smooth. We don't want one single line left in it when we get done this time. Thing is to then cut the design. So we go back to the fire for just a moment to hold its temperature while we get ready. Now chisel work, if done correctly, it is without a doubt one of the most beautiful, most pleasing parts of all the ornamental side of barn work to look upon. And if done incorrectly, then there is no doubt it is one of the ugliest of all. And this is the part that has absolutely no forgiveness. Normally, if I'm just hammering something out and I make a mishap with that hammer, 99.95% of the time I can heat it up and redo it, but not this. Once that mark is cut, it is forever there. You cannot change it. You can hammer it till it cuts it in two, but it will not take it away. You can hammer it till your eye can't see it, but when you bend it, it will break. So this is the part that you get no second chance. See, it shows up better in living color, though. This will hold it. Now, first of all, we begin by cutting that center vein. And this is the part that never a machine, never a stamp, never a die, never a punch press, ever created or ever will it be created that can take the place of the trained human hand. We've got machines that can stamp 1,000 leaves a second, and you can tell one a mile away. We live in a push-button microwave world, neither of which will do this any good. And if it would do this any good, then this would never be the same. And now those earrings that Miss Micah is wearing takes 3.5 hours to make that pearl beads. Wow. And then we'll cool it off. You can see it. And then we'll cut it off and complete it. Takes a lot of patience, though, to be a blacksmith. But then on the other hand, I suppose it takes a lot of patience to do most any craft. One final time. Down the center. Now we round down the edge so that it makes that vein disappear just right along the edge. Just gently take it away, just like the real thing. Now that looks cool to look at that, but that's still 600 degrees. 700 is the coolest thing that you can read with your eye, because that is the point when metal cools from its dullest of red back down to its actual color. Now we give it one pass of the brush. This is the same finish that's on that railing in the library at Biltmore House. This is what we call a polished or silver sheen. Then you can see what the leaf looks like. Isn't that a lot better than watching the nail be made? That's pretty cool.
Oh wow, that's beautiful.
I'll hold it.
You have quite a cadence when you're hammering on it.
Yeah, I'll explain that to
Okay.
you. So now we're going to cut it off right here, and that's the part that's going to form our stem that holds our key ring. But when you're watching someone hammer, or I'm watching someone hammer, we all have a great tendency to keep our eye on this hand, the one that holds the hammer, because that is the hand that we believe to be doing most of the work. But it's this hand which directs this hand. Every tap that you hear fall upon that anvil is this hand turning, flipping, rolling, repositioning that metal so that this one falls in the right place. Because you never break that rhythm with the hand that you're hammering with. You always follow straight through, because the anvil lifts the hammer for you. And if you stop that, then you have to be the one to lift it. So if it takes 3 seconds for me to flip that metal, reposition my eye, and look and hit again, then it's 3 taps on the anvil. That's the only thing that saves this joint, and this joint, is that continuous lift back. So that's why that this is always the very first test that I give an anvil before I will even ask someone what they want for it. This is a 1-inch ball out of a bearing range, 52/100 bearing speed. If you dropped this ball on this anvil, on that anvil, on any anvil ever made from here back to the first one, or upon any anvil ever made from here until the last one, if it reacted like this, then you wouldn't want that anvil. It would make a much better doorstop or a boat anchor than it would an anvil. Regardless of what height, up to 25 feet. If I hit it. Whoop.
No, you're okay.
I can't play golf. Shall return. Even. Right again. But that is the test to remember. If an animal won't do that, then you don't need the animal. Now, we go back to the fire. A little bit of water, turn that heat up. Now this time what we need is 2300 degrees, semi-yellow, bright orange. That's the color that we want. Almost. Just a little bit more. Now this works better than a hacksaw. And a whole lot quicker. You get used to it. It's like any other job. The more you do it, the more you get used to it. Now we draw this out to that long point up there. And even though, not a nail, still made the exact same way, every nail was made up until 1840 to 1850. But two separate colors this time, two separate temperatures. And even though a few others might have never looked at a piece of metal and tried to judge between two super hot colors, I promise you will see the difference. But you always want to make it look alike. That's the main thing. Now, first of all, we remove that scale so we don't hammer it into it. Then we draw it down. Because we used that hardy to cut that off, it had a real sharp edge. So then when you try to pull it down to one tiny little point, then it looks like little splinters because that edge has been folded over and over again. So that's why that we go bring it to welding heat, 2850, do that final tap at the end. But now this time, what you see will be different. This time, what you will be looking at when it comes from this fire will be solid snow white with brilliant sparks, just like a 4th of July spark that you hold in your fingers. And this was how every weld was done thousands of years before the electric arc welder or the acetylene torch that ever even became a thought entered into human mind. If you remember our color, snow white, brilliant sparks. Now we have one solid point. Then we draw it down to that needle point. that would be a nail. If it had the head on it, just do that neat. But now this time I'm going to do a little bit of the work, and I'm going to let it do a little bit of the work. I'm going to do it all, because any time that you can allow metal to be moved by its own will, it's a lot smoother than if you take a hammer and try to beat it into shape. So what I'm going to do is heat it up, start it to the right, start it to the left, and then make it wrap itself around the horn of that handle. So this time, we go back to the 2300 degrees in my yellow, bright orange. Some things just can't take the heat. Some things just can't take the heat.
Still on there.
Oh yeah, look at that. Now it ain't. Now we start it to the right, like so. Then we start it to the left, like so. And then we make it wrap itself around the horn of that handle. And that way we have the one perfect loop. Then we roll this back this way. But now we're fastly coming down to the last and the final part, which happens to be the best one, but not because it is the last one, but because it's the one that really makes it what it is. It absolutely wouldn't be anything without it. Now we don't want to close it completely up. We still have a key ring to go on. Not too much, just enough. Now we've come to the last and the final part of it all. And this was the only part to that entire thing to which I ever gave a name to when I was 15 years old. And this is where that I've always said that beauty meets comfort. Because if we left that leaf looking like that, then it wouldn't look very lifelike or living. Not to mention that would get mighty uncomfortable in a pocket. So we go back to the fire, we heat the tip, we roll the tip under, then we heat the center, we cool the tip, and then we hammer the center. That takes all of a half a minute. This takes care of our comfort. Right here. Now, bless you. Holland. We've got an abundance of it this year.
Everybody is after runners.
It didn't used to bother me years ago, but anymore it does. Now, we line it up, get everything just exactly the way we want it. This is our last opportunity. Tool just the tip, and then we hammer that center. And that's what gives the leaf its living. Then we do the final tune-up, just where we want it. Then we take a steel brush and remove the scale. Of course, that scale is just the oxidation of that metal in that heating process. That takes place each time you cross 1400 degrees. Then we'll put the ring on it, close it up, cool it off, and then you can see what it looks like. And when I do the final finish to all of them, I stamp them all VDWC on the back of that stem. The V standing for Vanderbilt, and it was made here. And I, being the master smith of the Biltmore House, DWC is mine. If you ever forget my name, just remember done with care. Little polish while it's still warm. Everything cleans up better when it's got a little temperature. Isn't that a lot better than watching Naomi made? I like your earrings. Those are neat. Yeah. Be sure and get more of it than you do me.
The artist and the
Let's take a picture.
Have you always been a blacksmith?
All my life. Yeah. Even when I done a few other things, I still done that too.
Is that right?
So it's always been a part that I couldn't never pass up. But I might as well play you all the tune on the Anvil before we quit. I figured you was wanting to see that.
Yeah.
Now, for all of you who have never heard this, sometimes when I mention playing the Anvil, somebody will lead toward the door because they think it's going to be bong bong. But they always come back. Where that playing the anvil, or making the anvil sing, as some people call it, actually began from was the oldest unwritten language upon earth, which goes back several thousands of years. And the reason that that language was first designed was because that in a shop with 5 or 6 men hammering, it was near impossible to hear and understand an audible human voice. So they learned that if they put their words into a tapped-out, coded, rhythmatic message upon the anvil, then nobody had to bother to listen for that voice. And since they was already having to listen to that hammer anyway, then why not let that be the part that gave them all the directions? So then long up in the 17th century, 1768, 1769, when Morse code was invented and the telegraph came along, then it took upon itself the name of the blacksmith's Morse code. And just as Morse code was dits and dots, the blacksmith's was taps and drags upon the anvil. Each one of them meant a different thing, just like the code, and then each group of them put together meant a different thing, just like the code. And even though created thousands of years before it, they did bear a great deal of resemblance. But then, for wherever that work was intended to be done upon that piece of metal, that was where that ancient language was tapped out upon the anvil, because the anvil became the hammer gauge to every single thing to ever lay upon it, because this represented the back of the metal, quarter way, half, 3/4, and finally the end. So that meant if the heated surface of metal to which you was hammering on was only this long, it automatically became this long. If it was this long, then it still automatically became this long. This was the gauge to it all. But 1908, 1910, that was when the entire world woke up that day and realized that the anvil was no longer just a tool. And that day the anvil was thus adopted into the percussion musical instrument category, and then you had the anvil choruses, which were made up to 50 anvils, all keyed differently, all played the music, all in their respective place, and sounded as beautiful as the Leroy Abernathy Choir. Every major orchestra, every major band, all had Anvil. But to play one that sounds a lot like wind chimes, bells, hammer dulcimer, xylophone, handbells. First pair of handbells ever played was cut from pieces of an old English handbell. My left hand represents the striker's hammer, my right hand, master's. Yeah, I told you when we got involved. Steve, a gentleman which used to be one of my apprentices here at Biltmore, got married last spring, so I played the anvil for his wedding. You can play anything on an anvil that you can a piano, providing it is a good piano. And providing it is a good anvil. Without one single fear of telling you wrong, I can truthfully and honestly tell you without a doubt in my mind that this is the first and original heavy metal music. Hope it was far better than watching someone make a nail. And I want you to all remember this. If you forget everything else that I've told you, remember this, that no matter how good the demonstration, without a good audience, it's worth nothing. And you all were a great audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hope you enjoyed it. I believe my little ball